What is it that makes the new idol's aesthetic work so well? And why does their branding as a whole look this way? Well, in the same way that Kenza looks high-end and minimalistic, Deep Cut's branding conveys traditional Japanese culture. And just you wait, by the end of this video, you'll understand how unbelievably solid their branding is, and why their branding is better than Off the Hooks and the Squid Sisters. So let's analyze the one place where the branding is most prominent, the podcast. Now, we'll get to the set design in a bit, but it's important to understand the crucial role the opening sequence plays. Their logo consists of a singular bold and dynamic shape that is repeated on the circle. This logo is not random, as it is very similar to the design we see in taiko drums. And as we know, the Splatfest performance goes all out with the Japanese theme, and music is the way they express themselves. So naturally, a logo that represents all of that, including the number 3, has to be considered incredible branding. The bold and geometric look beautifully bridges the gap between organic brush techniques to modern graphics. Without this identity, the jump from tradition to modern would have too much contrast and lose the complete feeling it successfully created here. The designers for this game did what is seemingly impossible. They made tradition look rebellious and modern. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Deep Cut's solid branding. Their brand colors are cleverly integrated into the opening motion graphic. Even the motion blur has all of their colors, which, by the way, looks so smooth and dynamic. I can't stop looking at it. It's worth noting that this logo actually animates this time, unlike the Squid Sisters podcast or the static opening of Off the Hook. And there's even a jingle that's contextual to the movement of the logo, whereas before, there was always an iconic sound to accompany the logo, but it just wasn't done this way before. Imagine, you boot up the game, and the first thing you see is a dynamic, fast and fun logo to get you into the headspace of the game. Works way better than this. The opening sequence even goes from yellow to gray to blue. All 3 colors are respected throughout the entire intro. It's honestly phenomenal how much they've squeezed into this one intro. Lastly, the bubbly paint graphics here convey that very modern and new graphical paint that Splatoon 3 has endorsed as part of the game's overall look. The texture on the gray bubbles with the lines in them can be seen in the previous games, perfectly encapsulating that familiar feel Splatoon has taken 7 years to establish. Now let's get to the characters that make the whole branding possible. If you would have told me months ago that we were getting a male idol and original jokes, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are. We have Shiver, Frye, and Big Man, and their corresponding colors are blue, yellow, and gray. But why is this important? Well, this continues the theme of contrast within the idol duos. If we pull out the good old color wheel, we can see that Kali and Mari's colors are opposite to each other, so they're complementary. Same with Pearl and Marina, and of course, now with Shiver and Frye. This continuity is important for the meta branding of the idols. Essentially, Off the Hook has to pass the torch, and some design choices and creative decisions should stay the same. In this case, the concept of contrast. Now, time for the most anticipated moment, the set design. The background is jaw-dropping. Easily the most appealing set design to look at in the entire franchise. And this is what I mean when I say Deep Cut's branding is the best in the franchise. The Squid Sisters had a pretty solid look in their podcast. They had their corresponding colors and a logo that reflects the fun and playful tone of their show. But it's just missing, well, the personality, the backstory. While their designs and individual personalities knock it out of the park, the set design doesn't reflect that as strongly. And Off the Hook's branding, while still established firmly, is not conveyed as strongly in their set design. However, the tone of the brand is there. Pearl and Marina are unapologetically themselves, which is technically on brand because their brand revolves around them as personalities. Now let's get back to the set. The top left has their graphical logo, which in its entirety feels very connected and linked, and with the 3 corresponding colors. And this logo can be seen on basically everything else on screen. Whether it be the mugs, the lantern, or the table, there's no denying that their logo is slapped on as many things as possible. Speaking of the lantern, let's talk about the light sources. They could have just went with regular studio lights, which obviously they have some behind the cameras, but within the set, The lighting is very organic. They all either come from those yellow lanterns or the neon sign in the back, both of which continue that Japanese branding that they're going for. They even have elements of Japanese architecture in the set, and the sign that's over their head is traditionally hand-painted. And while this could be a stretch, the cutouts in the background also correspond with that overall Japanese feel. It also feels hand-done, just like the traditional lettering on the sign. Even their clothes are on brand. It really doesn't get better than that. Anything else they would have added would feel like overkill, but it has just the right balance. Now, if you remember what I previously mentioned, this is traditional Japanese mixed with modern media. So some of the modern mediums that we see here are the television, and less notably, the pattern behind the sign. The Squid Sisters had a similar pattern, but I do feel like that one was a little much. This one is very subtle. It really helps give the sign texture, and it makes it stand out much more. And to top everything off, the logo on Shiver's fan seems to be a very simplified and modern food. While I'm not very familiar with Japanese food, I do feel like the bottom bar is likely a fish texture, and that's not all when it comes to the fan. The TV on this stage is shaped like a fan. Every single design decision connects to itself. That's what makes the branding so solid. That's what makes this entire thing so convincing. Everything from the way they sit to the way they're dressed and present themselves convey one solid core idea. And it's that what makes their branding the most solid in the entire franchise.